Now you can see my hand?
Yes.
Okay, here we go. Thank you. So I wanted this, since I have no, I was watching this MIT guy, he said you should do this. I wanted to show my credentials. I'm not going to do this very much. Since I have no credentials, I was going to establish my credentials. Is that reading backwards or forwards?
Forward.
Forward.
Okay. And then I want to talk about the monks changed it, because people say that to me, and I want to talk about that. And then I want to talk about my theory, the rock and the hard place. Okay. And then I want to talk about this book I read, which I'll show you real quick. It's right here. And then at the end, which is, I'm going to say 10:50 because we kind of got a late start. I'm going to talk about the simple way it is. It's really not that complicated. All right, so we're good. Are we rolling, really? All right, so the first thing I was going to establish my credentials by showing you. I can't see to focus this very well. This is, I don't know why I can't do this. So here's a Bible. Here's a Bible. Here's a Bible. One of the first things I ever studied was this world history course, World Masterpieces. They talked about Genesis. That was in community college. I read this, Concept of Anxiety, which is Kierkegaard. Some of you might know Bill Moyers. This people talk about the stories in Genesis. They don't talk about did they happen or didn't they happen. They talk about how, and they don't even talk about what it means necessarily, but how do I use it? Like, for instance, when God told Abraham to kill his son, you know, how do I use this story? Here's Debbie Washington's book, plug. Albert Schweitzer. Now, this one is interesting. He's a brilliant man, and so he talks about these other guys that have studied the Bible, the quest for the historical Jesus, and he, what I want to say is this book I'm reading, this one here I'm going to talk about, it's like gone beyond. It's like finding new information, or there's a new, and I want to just read real quick as far as miracles go. It says, the author refuses to assert either the possibility or the impossibility of a miracle, but speaks only as a historian. We do not say miracle is impossible. We only say there has never been a satisfactory authenticated miracle. And on the subject of miracles, see, if you really want to, you can see me. It really irritates you. You know, you can see me in this other view. But anyway, this, my dad gave me this, and it's kind of hard to explain this Fatima. And you say we haven't proven a miracle, but this thing, it's kind of hard to explain this. Okay, here's a book of Gnostic. I'll talk about Gnostic for a little bit, not much. This one here, the 5 Gospels, this one is a committee that looks at the New Testament and the words of Jesus and says, did he really say them or not? This is Hard Sayings of the Bible. This one is, I stole this from a campground, and it's supposed to be for believers, but it's pretty interesting. I mean, you can use it. It's kind of like watching Fox News. Outline of History is a remarkable book by H.G. Wells. Briefly talk about that. There he is. And then I always like to say, you know, if you haven't read the Bible and you think, I want to read the Bible, read a children's Bible. It's going to be, it's going to skip over some of the really boring stuff. Like here's Numbers is like 2 pages, Deuteronomy, you know, and then the interesting stuff like David and Goliath and stuff, it's really going to talk about. And here's the flight. And another thing, you're only going to have one gospel. It's going to combine all the gospels into one. Here's the pyramids on the flight into Egypt after Jesus was born, which is in one of the gospels. But the pyramids are not in the Bible, as my guide when I went to Egypt pointed out. This one here, Jesus Among the Teachers, this is a kind of like Home Alone, where they left him for 3 days. The first day, for 1 day, they didn't know where he was. And they went looking at him after him for 3 days. Okay. Now, that's my credentials. Now, the monks changed it. Let's look at, I'm going to bring this down a little bit. I'm going to try and focus that. I can't hardly see it on this little screen.
That's good.
It's good?
Good.
So I won't be writing anymore. We're done with that. So I'll read this, though, if you can't really see it. The first stuff to be written down after Jesus died was Paul. His first letter is about 50 years after Jesus died, or would have been 20 years after he died, 50 BC, AD. Gospel of Mark, 70. Gospel of Matthew, 85. Luke and Acts, 95. John, 100. Now this here is what we have of John, the Gospel of John. This is 125. This is all they have from one. They figure it was written in 100, but the only thing they have from one, this is the earliest thing they have, 125. But I mean, this thing is so studied, you know, they have people that look at this, you know, and try to place it and figure out how it fits into the greater scheme of things, so to speak. All right, now where's the rest of my pages? My notes. The next thing I'm going to do, I know what I'm going to do next. I'm going to go to my book here, and we'll look at the timeline, because I want to talk about rock in a hard place. All right. So we've got the year 28, John the Baptist. 29, John the Baptist executed, and this is Tiberius was the emperor. 30, crucifixion. Now this guy is saying Mark is started. And one thing I wanted to say about this book and this guy, the way he writes, it's like he knows. So he says Mark, the Gospel of Mark is started more or less right after, you know, the same year as Jesus died. And he also says Saul, who becomes Paul, is already starting to persecute the converts in the same year. This I won't talk about. Jerusalem, I won't talk about. Conversion of Paul. I know what I want to say. So here's the thing about my rock in the hard place. So I'm saying, and really all these people I'm reading, I don't think they're quite getting there as far as what was it about Jesus. All right, so we say Jesus was ordinary man, right? So then why did we have Christianity? He wasn't ordinary. There had to be something, more than one something probably. So the years I want to look at is this 30. He died in 30, and then Paul started preaching in 33. So you figure once Paul starts preaching, you feel like, well, that's the answer. But at any rate, that's my rock in the hard place, which I'm not going to say too much more about that at this point. If I can find my notes. What do I do with them? You would think I would. Here it is. All right. So I did that. Okay, Mark 15:34. Okay, here we're going to start getting into some meat, so to speak. Mark 34. Am I going to look at the book or this? I think I'm looking at the book. No, I'm not. This part here is fun. Is this where it is? No, this isn't where it is. Maybe I'll jump a little bit and do this because this is the funnest part, and I know you're all sort of getting tired of this. Okay, so this is in the book that I read, and he's his words and the Bible words, and I'm going to tell you which is which. So he's saying this is before Jesus died, and you know he died. They had the Passover meal just before he died. So he's got this. There's a story in there about where are we going to eat the Passover. It says, "Go into the city, and you shall meet a man bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him wherever he goes. Say to the master of the house, 'Where can I eat the Passover with my disciples?' He will show you a large room furnished and ready. Make ready for us." So we're going to do it there. So this is very mysterious. And this guy says it's a political deal. He says these are signs and counter signs. It's a covert operation. Now, I'll talk about that a little bit, why I don't really go along with that. Boy, I don't have much time left. But here's the thing that's fun. He says everybody is gathered in Mark's mother's house. And there is some, they actually talk in Acts about Mark's mother's house, and her maid's name was Rhoda. So he's got some information about Mark's mother's house, that they used to meet there, but not necessarily, I don't see that they had the Passover meal. But anyway, now we're going to get to the fun part. So he says they're having the Passover meal at Mark's mother's house. Judas is going to betray. Judas goes to betray him. So he tells the temple police where Jesus will be. Now, the party, Jesus and his disciples, besides Judas, sung a hymn, and they went out to the Mount of Olives. This is in the Bible. Now we're going back to his words. And this is going to be fun, the way he's got this written. And it's one reason I just really enjoyed reading this book. The temple police show up, but nobody is there. I'm trying to get this in the right place. Judas, knowing where they are likely to be, leads the police detail there. So in other words, the temple police showed up at Mark's mother's house, but everybody's already left, and Judas shows up. So he says, I know where they are, so I'll take you there. Well, Mark is sleeping in his mother's house. Roused from sleep, he throws a sheet over himself. He runs ahead to warn Jesus and his disciples. But no sooner has Mark gotten there than the police arrive. He calls them police, but you know what he means, right? The authorities from the Jewish authorities. And after a brief scuffle, they arrest Jesus. The disciples get away, so does young Mark. Now this is going to be in the Bible, and I've heard this before, but it's never quite been explained in this fun of a way. They all left him and fled, and a certain young man, this is in the Bible, followed with them, having a linen cloth cast about him over his naked body. And they lay hold on him, but he left the linen cloth and fled naked. This is Mark 14:51-52. Blah, blah. That's not right. So thus does Mark write himself into the story. And why not? He was there. So in other words, he says, I know who wrote the Gospel of Mark, and the age thing. You know, a teenager, a young guy when Jesus died. So the age thing kind of works out. Now let's see, what do I want to talk about now? I'm running out of time. So I wanted to make a big deal out of the last words of Jesus. Let me go to this book. The last thing Jesus says, Eli, 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 lama sabachthani. My God, why did you abandon me? This is in Mark and it's in Matthew. Now, this is also Psalm 22. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? More or less the same thing. Different translations, same thing. So here's the thing of it. And then what happened after Jesus died? The disciples started going over the Bible because while he was alive, they were thinking he was going to do something great. So they were just following him. After he died, they had to look for a different explanation. So they went to the Bible and they looked for things that would show a suffering Messiah. So here's Psalm 22. And this is the suffering. I am scorned by men and despised by the people. So here's the thing of it. This is Jesus' last words. My God, why have you forsaken me? Except it's Psalm 22. Did he make this plan? He was going to say Psalm 22. Was that the thing he always said? Like he stubbed his toe. He says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Or did he not say that? Luke says, into your hands I trust my spirit. John says it's all over. So here's the thing. All the words attributed to Jesus as he dies are taken from Scripture. So it's talking about these words, but I wanted to say there was one thing. The great variety in these attributions illustrates once again how free the individual evangelists were in putting the words of Scripture on Jesus's lips. So here is man's dying words, and we really don't know what he said in his dying words, because when they wrote the Gospels, they put in what they wanted to put in for the reasons they wanted to put in. So let's see. I'm running out of time. I did that. Now, there's one other thing that's kind of fun. This Paul and Onesimus. So Paul was a prisoner in Ephesus, and he had converted this fugitive slave. So the slave ran away. Paul converted him to Christianity, and the slave is actually a manager of sorts. So Paul writes to the slave owner, who is also a Christian, and says, hey, this guy could be very helpful to me if you were able to free him. So this Onesimus, this former slave, starts helping Paul. Well, according to this guy, he starts editing Paul's letters, and he actually writes his own stuff under Paul's name, which was not terribly uncommon. One other thing I'm going to say real fast, because I'm running out of time. As far as the monks changed it, you remember how he said Mark was started the day Jesus died? Well, it was started, but it wasn't finished, so to speak. So what happened was, as the church evolved, they would plug in stuff that helped the new way of looking at things. For instance, when they first started, they wanted to they would just the end was near, and they would just give money to whoever. They just donate all their money. Well, that became inconvenient. So they started to add stuff that says, well, you really don't have to give away all your money. You can still get to heaven without giving away all your money. And another thing they really changed quite a bit was Jesus initially was he wasn't necessarily a man. He was but they made him more and more as they went along, more and more equal with God. And for instance, if he's the Son of God, he was born, he didn't exist forever because he was born from the Father. But then they changed that to say, no, he existed forever. And they'll even say now he was the creator of the world. So these things were inserted as Mark was, after the Gospel of Mark was disseminated, Mark went back and put stuff in there to help the new church, and others also may have done it. But so it happened way early. It happened early on. Let's see. So the last thing I want to say is, as far as political, personally, I don't go for the political. Here's why you might think it's political. My God, why have you forsaken me? That sounds like he had something in mind that didn't work out. God was going to help it. I speak to them in parables that they may understand, they may not understand, and then I tell you in secret. So there was secret information. The yeast and the mustard seed. Well, that means I tell one person, then he tells another. I can't blast it out like a loudspeaker. It has to be kind of passed along from person to person. What did Judas tell the authorities? This is a bit of a mystery. And the king of the Jews, after only 3 years, he was murdered for being the king of the Jews. So this sounds political, but I don't go for it. I don't have time to say why. But now I'm going to real super fast. I'm going to tell you the real simple story of what it really is. Jesus was 100% dedicated to the spiritual, the heavenly. He didn't think anybody should own anything. If you have 2 coats, give one away. There's no rich man in heaven. He didn't have a coin when he wanted to teach about taxes. He said, "Show me a coin." True Religion by H.G. Wells. This book outlines, if you can tell a person that has true religion because they don't care about money. So I see Jesus as a deeply spiritual man, Olympic class, concentrated on one thing. You might say nothing distracted him from his self-appointed mission to instruct his fellow Jews on the finer points of religion and God, of course, as he saw them. And of course, he disagreed. You know, they say he was a Jew, but he disagreed extensively with the Jewish way of doing things. And so that's that. So I ran about 3 minutes over. That's not too bad. So I'm opening up for questions. And I think I'll switch computers too. I'll shut this other one down.
This isn't a question, but it's a comment. I'm amazed at the wide amount of reading that you have done about the different viewpoints on Jesus. Amazing.
I'll tell you something else. When I read War and Peace, I barely remember it. But when I read something about the Bible, I'm telling you what, I eat it up. I remember it.
Have you read the Bible all the way through, Bill?
Yeah, sure.
But which Bible?
Right.
I was going to have a page where I showed you the different translations. It's all the same thing. That's why I say read the children's Bible. It's really going to tell you.
That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to read the children's Bible.
And it has pictures.
Karen has her hand up.
My mother was raised Dutch Christian Reform. And so I went to grab her Bible while you were talking. And in the front of it, it says, Old and New Testaments translated out of the original tongues. And it's compared with the most ancient authorities and revised. So I am going to go back and compare some things from this version of the Bible and one that I was given when I was a child. I find it interesting that there are so many versions of the Bible floating around, depending on the religious beliefs of the.
You can Google Eli, my God, why have you forsaken me? And look at it in 10 different translations. It's all the same thing. I'll tell you another little fun fact. The Ptolemies, when they occupied Egypt and built
Alexander the Great started Alexandria. They gathered together 70 rabbis to translate the Hebrew Old Testament into Greek. And it's called the Septuagint.
Bill, did you happen to look at the book called The Historical Jesus?
Well, the search for the quest for historical Jesus. This one?
Yes, so. Is it done by a committee?
Albert Schweitzer.
No, it's not that
The
one.
committee is
It's a much later one.
The committee is the five Gospels, and it has to do. The fifth Gospel is the Gospel of Thomas, which is a sayings gospel. It's not story. It's not the story from start to finish. It's sayings Jesus said, and it's more or less along the similar lines. Now, there's other gospels out there that are more Gnostic, which is means you are saved by your own knowledge. So the quest, and I don't understand it 100%. I read this book, but I'm not real big on it. But it has to do with the knowledge part of it. That Jesus was, here to show us the way that you do it yourself with your mind, so to speak. And see the beta, when the Bible was changed, the biggest changes had to do with the concept that you are saved by faith in Jesus through grace. And this is where the biggest changes occurred in the New Testament to hammer that point home.
There's an artist in Berea, Bob Berger has a store down on the Artist Row, and he did a study of the various versions of the Bible and when they were written, and actually put it in a form. Thank God he didn't lose it in the fire. But there are over 105 different versions when he did that, and that did not include the abridged and rewritten American Bible and abridged that's being used by the far right now. And as a side note, Jesus is claimed as a guru in several lines, several guru lines in India.
I have a comment. I'm interested in this story, and I've been reading some lately, probably more history than I care to read, and very complicated. But I'm of the opinion this week that Jesus never existed, that he was merely a myth that was built around the Jewish Old Testament. When you look at the Old Testament and the number of things that were done, in particular blood sacrifices, Jesus was just the culmination of that when they sacrificed him on the cross with his blood. And even now you hear Christians talk about washed in the blood, and it's all part of the history of the Jewish people. For the first 300 years, the people who thought they were Christians lived in very small groups and communities around that part of the world, and they didn't communicate, and not until 300 did anybody pull it together. Mark didn't write until 40 years later, and even Paul never saw Jesus. In fact, nobody that has written anything down, and no historian has written anything down where they actually saw Jesus. Paul saw him as a vision on a walk that he was doing. So I'm more thinking that it's probably that Jesus is probably a mythology, and I'm still looking for that, but currently that's what I'm thinking.
Barb, did you have a comment?
Well, I remember when I was in confirmation class way back in like 8th grade, the preacher mentioned that Mark was in fact there. I mean, and he quoted exactly the same thing, that he was that young boy with the linen cloth and, right. And so actually was there. And it was sort of implied, I don't recall him saying it, but it was kind of implied that if you want a gospel that actually tells a story that a person was there, Mark would be the one to go to, and that the rest of them were all written so much later.
That's right. But as I said, remember, even Mark, after it was written, he added to it. And he added to it the way that they kind of tell, they really drill down and look at, it's English though. I mean, to say, when you're writing and you write A, B, C, and then it jumps to K, Q, and then it goes back to E, F, G. So they say, oh, this was stuck in there later. And as I say, it's usually a matter of pushing the divinity of Jesus and the everlastingness of Jesus and softening. Jesus was very harsh. He says, if you have one coat, if you have two coats, give one away. So they said, well, you know, if you have two coats, maybe one's for rain and one's for cold, you know, you could have two coats, you know. So they would do stuff like that.
All right. Shall we wrap it up then? Thank you, Bill, very much.